Welcome to Learning with Lerner, where we embark on a transformative journey of knowledge and personal growth. I'm Lindsay Lerner, your dedicated host and guide as we delve into the depths of unconventional wisdom. Together, we'll explore the stories and insights of remarkable trailblazers who have forged their own paths. Brace yourselves for thought-provoking conversations, profound insights, and eye-opening experiences. Our mission is to challenge the norm, ignite curiosity, and empower you to embrace your unique journey. This is Learning with Lerner. Hey there. Thank you so much for joining us on an exhilarating episode of Learning with Lerner as we feature the extraordinary Court Roberts. Prepare to be captivated by Court's transformative approach as she infuses mindfulness, curiosity, play, and candidness into unforgettable experiences worldwide. From workshops on emotional intelligence to leading learning and development in DEI initiatives, Court inspires individuals and organizations alike. Listen and learn as she shares insights on creating a daily morning practice, volunteering with impactful organizations, inspiring youth, and offering intuitive healing sessions. Get ready for an exciting journey of personal growth and empowerment with Court Roberts on Learning with Lerner. As always, listeners, thank you so much for listening. It would mean the world to me if you subscribed, rated, and of course, reviewed this podcast. It really does help. How did your upbringing in your teeny tiny hometown in Kansas shape your perspective on the work that you've done or that you're doing on transformation and holding space for others?
Growing up in a town of 35,000 people, which is big to some people, small to others, depending on their definition of town. But I was really taught how to appreciate and be friends with the people who were around me. We didn't have a ton of options when it came to who you were going to be friends with. And I had a lot of church experiences growing up, including many nights of the week being in youth group. And there really wasn't much to do other than what we created for ourselves. So we ended up making up games and activities and rituals and doing all sorts of ridiculous things that if we were in a place like Los Angeles or New York would have never had time and space to emerge. So there's an element of being bored with people and really co-creating magic with just 5 people in a basement. So that's one thing. The second thing I'll say is, as I've grown up and looked back on that time and gone back to Kansas and reconnected with some of those people who are really salt of the earth humans, and my belief structures and my political beliefs and my perspective on the world has widened and changed a lot. And in some ways, it would seem that I no longer have anything in common with where I was raised. But to go back and allow myself to feel connected to the land, to the goodness of people, to let all of the moments of divisiveness just fall away and connect heart to heart, regardless of belief or perspective, has been really special. And I think a feeling of unity against all odds, and something our world needs more of. And I almost wish everyone had the experience of growing up in a small town or a place and then moving to a different place and having very contradictory experiences and learning to feel integrated with those two.
How do you go about that integration? I know some of what you're talking about I've felt now having moved away. And it's like it's always this internal battle and this, I think for me, like a labeling of outgrowing and then feeling like weird or guilty about it and then being like, oh, like this doesn't quite fit anymore. But also, like you said, like knowing that there is that connectivity and that there is that specialness to it.
I think part of it is practicing radical acceptance of people's life path. And this idea that my parents, even if I want them to understand me in certain ways or make bolder decisions than they currently are, that might actually not serve them. And my parents might be the best versions of themselves living in Kansas. And for them to move to a global city might not be what they need to learn in this lifetime. It might not be how they can be most of service. And so, me just acknowledging that my path is totally unique, as is yours, and we can't copy and paste decisions or frameworks or beliefs, and choosing to see the beauty in each person's life path, and then finding the love in the moment and choosing to receive love from them in the way that they want to give it.
Mm.
And I'm speaking, yeah, it takes it's not easy. It's very hard. This is what I aspire to. But to show up in a conversation and to have people ask me a set of questions that mean nothing to me and makes me feel like you don't know me at all, the fact that you're asking me these questions. But then to pull back and say, you're doing this because you're trying to communicate love and care. And can I connect with the intention behind it? And to believe that is a much more beautiful approach than to choose offense. If we choose to not be offended or outraged, we can actually get to something underneath that, which is what can I receive from this experience? And how can I receive this as a form of love?
Totally. And for the listeners that may not be super familiar with some of the terms that I know eventually we'll get to, but I think radical acceptance, since you've already mentioned it, do you have a definition that you like to work with of radical acceptance and what that is and what that means to you?
Well, I would say it's being with what is. So, really allowing yourself to see the good, the ugly, the scene in front of you, and then just getting into agreement with it. And another phrase that is actually my mantra for this year is perceiving the resonance in all things with equanimity, which is a lot of words to
Ooh,
just say
that's good
that in
though.
every,
I
yeah,
like that.
in every moment to believe that there's a harmony happening and or there's a lesson happening or that I am in a process that will one day pay off, whether that's I'm learning an important lesson about life or I'm interacting with a version of myself that needs to change, evolve, etc. And so, yeah, there's that feeling of believing, I think, in the goodness and that things are working out for my good. And so I can accept where someone else is at. It's an optimistic view towards life, that's for sure. But I forget who it was that said there's two ways to live. One is if nothing were a miracle, and the other is if everything were a miracle. And who knows if it is a miracle or not? I'm not claiming to be the final say, but I would much rather live a life where everything's a miracle.
Same, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And so at what point did you leave Kansas and go to, was LA the move? Or was there a bunch of other in between?
I left at 18 and came out to college and ended up going on a whole journey and ended up staying in Los Angeles. And that was, for me, I didn't even realize it at the time, but a choice to be in a different world and to just widen, an act of like perpetually opening my eyes and engaging with new things. And so that choice to embrace what is new and to go on the journey continues to lead me into magnificent places I didn't know existed.
And at what point along the way on your journey did you start assisting others in theirs?
I don't know. That's a great question. I don't think that's ever been, I guess I've enjoyed sharing where I'm at each step along the way because I think, a real privilege for us to share our process with others. And the main way I learn is through my life and having seen my friends go through things. I've seen my friends go through things that are so, I'll say to me, horrific, painful. And I've learned so much from them that in some ways I don't I got the lesson. It's almost like I don't have to go through it in the exact same way because I've learned from them sharing their process.
Totally. And was that more of like a casual sharing process of, hanging out in whether it's coffee shops or living rooms or whatever and simply sharing? Or was it more of a structured, I'm going to blog, I'm going to send a newsletter, I'm going to share on socials, something to that effect?
I did start 2 years ago, the beginning of 2020, sending a monthly friend update. It was inspired by friends who were sending me monthly friend updates. And
A good time to start doing it.
I had no idea. It was a juicy time to begin sharing life updates. And then I went through a divorce and all these, COVID, and so much has happened. But I would just send it from my personal Gmail to like 150 people. I had no idea who read it. I had no idea if people were blocking it. It didn't matter. It was just a chance. I did tell folks, if you want to be taken off, please email me and let me know. I no longer want to receive these, but in the 3 years of doing this, I've only had one friend email me, and it was a good ego check moment. And he just said, "Hi, Court. I no longer need to receive these updates. Please take me off. Thank you."
Short, sweet, and to the point.
I just said, "I appreciate your honesty."
Damn. Oh, that's good. That's good.
But I'm not keen on, I've never been compelled to join the social media discourse, and the way that discourse and sharing happens on there so often feels like it's a form of capitalism. It's being commodified. People take their personal journeys and then sell you something from that. And that just hasn't appealed to me as much as direct dialogue, or this email newsletter was a great way to share a few things I'd learned that month.
Oh, that's cool. And so that was the format was.
That's been the format. And also because when you go through a big life change like divorce or something, and you see people, you end up having to share the same story 100 times. And the updates is one level of conversation. You get together with a friend, you haven't seen them in a long time. There's like a whole slew of updates that has to happen before you get to like the process of the heart, or what we're grappling with. It's the context setting. And I wanted to do the context of my life at Mass. So when I saw folks, we could just dive into present reality.
What point along the way did you start getting into this space and having it actually become work, like work, getting paid for work, rather than just something that you enjoyed and something that you were seemingly innately good at?
Yeah, my love of gathering friends and creating experiences definitely had its roots in Kansas. And I found that as I was in my 20s and inviting friends over or inviting people to go to events, I think part of it was that I built trust with community over time, that the things I sent invites to were quality, that there were quality people there. And so, and then also I just think that there's some people who are the organizers in a friend group. You're like, this person plans things, this person invites people, and everyone says yes. And it doesn't suck their life force to do that. And I noticed that I was really energized by the act of planning and inviting, and that people liked saying yes. And so that, even just doing that casually over and over and allowing my creative expression to come in and plan and try things, really created a lot of internal confidence. And I would say it was probably in 2015, 14 or 15, that I partnered with a friend of mine, and we started taking workshops and experiences into the workplace. And that's when all of my community facilitation started to transition into professional facilitation. And I've been doing that ever since. I think it's 8, 9 years now. And my style as a facilitator has just become, I think I skewed when first entering professional workforce, you kind of skew ultra professional, where there's an obsession about every word, and it's more about hitting certain professional outcomes. And that's all still present, but there's a lot more of the casual human humor. I'm bringing a lot more humor into my facilitation and levity lately. And I think that just comes from the number of reps that I've done.
Right. And is that more of a trust in yourself and your own process versus sticking to the bullet points and the suit and tie and the picture of what it quote unquote should be?
I think it's that and an extension of what happened during COVID for so many people where their personal lives were exposed, their home life, what's going on in the background, kids walking in without their pants on while we're on an interview. It just became a lot more real, and people are really going through it. And I think that acknowledging that and being able to bring emotion into the room is something that has real lasting power in terms of the impact on people and the desire to be known and seen and to share in life's reality.
Yeah, exactly. And what are some of the key tools or practices rather of, I know from the experiences that you've hosted. So what are some of those key tools, practices of mindfulness, play, curiosity, and especially I think like the best quality of every event that I've been to that you've done is the candor that you find most effective in creating all of these like, truly unforgettable experiences?
Tools. I mean, there's so many. It's interesting. A friend was recently asking me, I actually get asked this probably once every month or two about where folks can go to learn to facilitate. Like what facilitation trainings are out there. There's really not many. I mean, Priya Parker's book gets mentioned a lot. There's a community called Authentic Relating that does some incredible work, not really geared for professional workplaces so much as for communities. But there is an element of, yeah, fucking up a lot and trial and error. And for me, the most important part of facilitation is checking in with myself beforehand and getting really anchored in my intention for the space, how I want to feel, how I want other people to feel, and to remember that. Because if I'm in that place and I need to riff or something goes wrong, I just drop back to my intention. Or I have 2 more minutes of extra time to fill because the breakout room's broke. I can just center in on my intention and speak from that place. And so there's a feeling of everything could go wrong. But because I know my intention and I am in integrity with what I'm sharing and the fact that I believe it's valuable to people, you're unshakable.
Where does that come from? Is it the reps? Is it you being truly in touch with yourself? Or is it all of these practices that continue to hone in on it?
I would say it mostly comes from me believing, or the things I say yes to are aligned with how I feel called to be of service in the world. So for collective practice, which is one of the experiences you've joined, that is something that has enriched my personal life for many years. And I've seen the impact. And so I'm committed to doing it. And so that's the conviction of there's impact here and there's an opportunity to be of service. That's the conviction. The number of reps is like, yeah, if something breaks, I kind of know how to fix it. Or if we go 10 minutes over on this section, I kind of know where to pull back. It does add confidence, but the conviction's not there. Reps don't matter.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you briefly touched on it, so I think we can elaborate on it a little bit more. Do you have a specific example or examples of these transformational experiences that you've facilitated and some of the impact that it's had on the many participants that have joined?
Sure. Yeah, I can talk about collective practice here because that's alive for me. And we just finished our fourth cohort. I really love building things with friends. And I used to think, oh, that's why I couldn't be an artist or like a world class painter because I'd just be in a studio by myself all day and that's no fun. And then I realized art can absolutely be collaborative. and that I can collaborate with most everything I do in my life. And so Collective Practice is a community initiative that my friend Casey Rose and I started based off of our own daily practice of spending time with ourselves in the morning and using modalities such as meditation, chanting, breath work, morning pages, writing, movement, stretching, yoga, you name it. There are a lot of ways that you can connect with yourself in the morning. I've tried a lot of them. And what's most important is consistency. And so, this idea of building habits is hard, but doing it with friends is easier. And saying what would happen if we created a cohort where everyone committed to doing a morning practice for 40 days? And what if we partnered with world class elders, teachers, lineage holders, facilitators who shared their morning practice with us and did that in bite-sized ways? Because something like Kundalini, it's an ancient tradition, there's a lot to it. How do you get started? Why not start with a 10-minute video and really get familiar with that? And so, there's a quote from Blaise Pascal that says, the trouble with Western man is that he is not comfortable in an empty room. And there's a lot of noise, and it's very easy to wake up and pick up your phone and get going and start engaging with all of the noise. And we thought it would be a worthwhile experiment to see what would happen if a group of friends and friends of friends didn't do that. So we've been building this slowly, and it was so fun to have you as a part of a cohort as well. But one of the most fun parts about facilitating and hosting transformational experiences is the opportunity to improve over time. And that has been one of the things that has honed my skill set more than anything is after every call or after every email that we would send as a part of this cohort model, taking the time to say, what was the impact of that? How could it be a little more compelling? How could we support people more? Was that really effective? And we've honed over the last, it hasn't even been a year, but we did just finish our fourth cohort with 120 people from all over the world. And we always send out a survey at the end and we read every single comment and we feel excited about the chance to iterate. And so there's no kind of doing it wrong, especially when it's an act of service. I mean, the amount of money that we make from this versus the amount of time that we put in is laughable. It doesn't make any sense.
It's one of my questions.
Financially. No, this is a labor of love.
Right.
This is a community service initiative
Sure.
that could potentially become very lucrative on the line. As of right now, it's a devotion, a project of devotion. And, it's like my friend's mom joining and doing Kundalini for the first time in her 70s. Or another friend's mom joining and then committing to a year-long meditation group course following the cohort. And this feeling of intergenerational impact and really equipping people to be their own guides. I'm not interested in getting up on a pedestal and telling people how to live or how to do something. I'm more interested in showing them potential approaches, potential tools, and then giving them a way to discover what's best for them.
I think a lot of folks especially folks that have listened to this podcast that I've heard feedback from, there's a ton of fear around putting themselves out there and starting a new thing. And so for you to say, hey, we have this thing, it's called Collective Practice. It's been a year, we've cranked it out and we've done it 4 times and had this incredible impact. And not only have we done it 4 times, but we've improved it 4 times. 1, has there been fear around it? And 2, how are you able to do, this is my own bias and projection, but how are you able to do that mental gymnastics of looking at it as the iteration and not, oh man, we fucked that up, we got to fix it. And then, and how do you create that, I mean, obviously the community of people who are involved are very open-minded and seemingly very nimble. So that helps. But I know for me and my personal experiences, it's such a nerve-wracking thing to put something out there and then be like, okay, we got to change it. We got to change it. We got to change it. And what is that thing or things that allow you to continue to give yourself permission to continue to grow it in that substantial way?
Sure. I'll answer the second question, and then I might need to be reminded of the first. But
Same.
I recently saw rewind. I recently saw that HBO, an intern at HBO, sent out a test email
Oh my
to their
God.
full
Yes.
subscriber list. And I was reading HBO's tweet in response, and it was such a human moment. And it sparked this whole conversation on Twitter where a bunch of people would say, "Dear intern, when I was 37, I accidentally sent this email to the CEO of the company that said, 'Hello, anal,' but his name was Alan, and it auto corrected." And it just created this whole conversation on the internet that was so relatable and really reminded me that people aren't looking for perfection. And people are actually relieved when you take perfection or perfectionism off the table. So every mess up that we do is a chance to be relatable and for us to be able to just be honest about the process and to get on a call and say, here's what we tried last time. We learned that it didn't work for people because of this, this, and this. So this time we're going to try this. And thank you so much for being on this journey with us. That's all people really care about. And the minute you think that like the song has to play perfectly, you can't accidentally post something the wrong day in WhatsApp, like it's committing to getting back on the horse and laughing at yourself. And I think I've done enough things wrong enough times to learn that if I keep my composure and if I let it roll off my back, other people will as well. If I'm on a workshop with 120 people and my tech starts freaking out and then I start freaking out, that's going to affect the nervous systems. Other people are going to be like, ooh, Court feels awkward. I feel awkward for her. Oh, this feels stressful. But if I'm cool as a cucumber and I'm just like, you know what, this isn't working. Let's take a few more minutes to journal. I'll let you know when it's back, or we need to restart this. We've had to restart calls and have to text the Zoom links to people. A lot of stuff has gone wrong.
Yeah, just rolling with it. Yeah, no, that's true.
It's how you carry yourself as a facilitator that people look to.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. I know you touched on it a bit earlier in terms of like social media, the commodification of folks' journeys. And that's something that I really admire about the work that you're doing, the work that I've seen you do with Casey. And I would love just to hear and to share your opinions on the commodification of just wellness and a lot of the Eastern philosophies and practices that have come over to the West, and how to like not do that in in a gross and not meaningful way, and how folks who are listening may be able to engage and to explore and not feel, I think, exploitative in that way.
It's really tough. It's hard. And this is where like I get to do a lot of work around my judgments, because when I'm on social media and someone's sharing about their journey, and then on the last slide, they sell you on something. And you just, there's this context switching of, oh, I thought you and I were having like a personal moment. And are you just sharing this because you want me to join your program? And that's hard for me. That might work out really well for some people. And I know a lot of the reasons why people share on social media is to not feel alone and to feel supported. And so that's not how I go about doing those things, but I don't want to demonize people who do share their whole journey on social media. I think what's important to realize is it's never the whole journey. It's impossible through a post or a series of posts or reels to share full context. It's also something I've been working on and talking a lot about with friends is like, we're never going to be fully understood, even by the people we're closest to. And so it's kind of impossible to think that we're ever getting the full picture of me and my journey, you and your journey. So letting go of that, could we scale what we're doing more aggressively if we did share continually on social media? Yes. That's just never been my approach. And I think it's important for people to hear that you don't have to produce endless amounts of content in order to get people to sign up for things. And so myself, Casey, other people who are involved in the process and project, none of us are keen on content. I don't think any of us have TikTok. I've created maybe one reel in my entire life. Like we are behind the ball. But when you're doing something that has genuine impact and is meeting a genuine need, word of mouth can spread organically, and also just not needing to scale so aggressively. I don't believe in aggressive scale. None of my business models that I've worked on or community initiatives I've started have focused on that as a chief success measure. And I think that's really allowed for us to be more intuitive and gentle and balanced. We are in late stage capitalism, and people look at things and they want to see the bell curve going up. And I also believe that a lot of projects and initiatives and maybe community initiatives should have an end date. And I don't believe in starting projects that are perpetually ongoing.
Sure. Oh, I love that point. And to your point about balance, I had a conversation with a friend of mine. She was on the podcast a while ago, Madeline Shaw. She started the one of many companies, but Isle period products, the reusable products. And she I was kind of taken aback by it. We're talking about balance and how and work and life and all of these things. And obviously, the hell kind of crap illusion is that? But she was like, Lindsay, you only have to balance things if they're at opposite ends of the spectrum. I was like, damn, okay, that one hit. That really makes a lot of sense. So that's what sparked that thought. And for you, I know you mentioned obviously collective practice does not, is not paying all of your bills at this moment. I hope one day it really does. But in this moment,
Yeah.
in this moment, it's not. So I know there's so many other projects that you work on that are more quote unquote corporate. What does that work like for you, and how do you attach that to more of your mission and align it with your values?
Absolutely. Well, I spent 5 years building a company with a friend focused on corporate workplace facilitation and what we called relational mindfulness, and really helping people connect into their relationship with themselves, one-to-one dynamics, and then group dynamics and belonging. And what is my relationship to the company? Using experiential education, mindfulness, embodiment, creativity. And so that has remained in my fields. And I'm grateful to still be facilitating corporate workshops, helping companies plan retreats and offsites. I consult for a company called Marco Experiences, and I help design rituals that companies can integrate into retreats to build that ethos of how are we relating and how can we be more strategic and intentional about the ways that we gather. I've also had the privilege of building out learning and development and DEI categories for Marco, which has meant that I get to really bring in my community of facilitators around the world and give them exposure, because any facilitator will tell you that they love doing their work, but selling the work is such a pain in the ass.
Mm-hmm.
You can spend 50, 60, 70% of your time trying to sell.
Can say that again.
And only 30% of it in the room doing what you're best at.
Yeah.
So any way I can uplift other facilitators, hosts, experienced designers, and create easier pathways between them and companies, I'm on board with. I do custom experience design and curriculum design. And so one of my favorite projects I worked on this year was for Friends at Work, which is John Legend's agency. And they had an initiative called Future Without Fear, which was really focused on helping educate high school youth and give them, especially from underrepresented communities and schools that don't typically have access to a lot of career building opportunities, to bring them into an art gallery where all the art is curated to show the lives of young people who are pursuing a future with no fear. And so if you had no fear, no obstacles, no barriers, what would you imagine for yourself? It was a really special project, super grounded in creative arts. And I designed a 2 hour long workshop where we'd bring groups of 15 to 20 high school students into the gallery space. And throughout the course of 2 hours, we would interact with the art. We would interact with their stories. There was storytelling moments. There was mindfulness moments. They would write down their fears on sticky notes and crumple them up. And then they would make this visual collage representing their future without fear. And that's really what I love doing. I love jumping in with a team and building something custom. Always an element of quirky playfulness, too. I really believe play is a really underutilized resource.
Definitely. And I know you volunteer for several organizations as well. Is this the same type of work that you're doing in your volunteering hours as well?
Yeah, there's so many opportunities to volunteer out there, and I wanted to find opportunities that align with my skill sets. So with Bottomless Closet or Qualified Women, I come in and I teach the same workshops that I charge companies thousands of dollars to do. And I get to teach it to women who are trying to re-enter the workforce for free. And I love those experiences because they're just such real conversations. No one's putting on a professional mask. People are just raw. And so the types of questions that I get and the way that these women interact with the content is so life-giving.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Do you have any advice or guidance for our listeners who aspire to create these types of transformative experiences and hold space for others in their own lives and in their communities?
Yes. It's really special. A few people have reached out to me for mentorship or just for conversations to riff off things they're designing. And so, in conversation with them, one of the things that keeps coming up is an encouragement to experiment and to find a group of people that are safe for you, who would give you honest feedback, and create an experience for them. So I think birthdays are really incredible ways to start playing around with things that you're drawn to. So maybe you're drawn more to like theater and you want to create like a mini 3-minute long theatrical celebration of your friend. Or maybe you're really into food and gathering around food. And so you can design like maybe we all feed this person some birthday cake and like whisper affirmations in their ear. There's a lot of playful ways that you can start to experiment and learn how to guide people into a process because part of it is creating a compelling case. Sometimes you tell people in advance what they're going to do, sometimes you surprise them the moment of. But either way, there needs to be an act of persuasion of like, here's what we're going to do, here's why it matters, and here's why I'm super excited about it, and here's how you do it. So that act of engaging others is key no matter what you're doing and practicing your ability to be persuasive and to carry the confidence. And then, you take a 3-minute birthday activation, and then maybe next time you facilitate a conversation over an entire dinner. And then maybe next time you add in a creative practice after dinner and you partner with someone else and you see what they have to bring to the table. You don't have to create all the ideas yourself, but the role of the facilitator is to create a container. And what are the conditions of this container? And how do we engage? And how do we honor each other, creating a quote, safe space?
I was going to say, do you have another term? Because I want to use a different one.
It's not my favorite term because it implies that there's not safety in a way. I like to just call it I always call these things like your yes, what it means to be present here today, like what we're all saying yes to together feels cozier. And then getting feedback and not being afraid to get feedback. And we're all sensitive beings. I'm not saying that we aren't, but you can think about a question of like, how could I make this better next time? You don't have to ask, what did you hate? You can phrase the question, what would you do if you were reading this? Or how could I make this even more inclusive? Because the further you get into this, you realize that people have different learning styles. Some people are visual learners, some people are kinesthetic learners, auditory. There's so many ways that people intake information. And then people's level of extroversion and introversion often have a lot to do with what they feel comfortable sharing and not sharing and how they prefer to interact. And it's really special to be able to give people options for how to engage and to not assume that everyone is going to want to do your thing the way that you want to do it.
And my second to last question, one of the many tools in your toolbox, which must be ginormous, must be heavy to carry around. Could you explain the concept of intuitive massage and craniosacral therapy and how these modalities contribute to holistic healing and well-being, and how you're able to integrate them into all the things that you do?
Absolutely. A few years ago, right around the time I turned 30, so a Saturn return, some astrologically minded people would say, I discovered that I had a gift for touching and using touch to connect with people's stories and processes. And I had been on a big journey of listening to my own body and developing a deeper connection to my body, really since I was 27. And the idea that I'd been facilitating so many group experiences where it was one to many, and body work became a modality that was one to one. And sometimes we like to think, oh, I'm going to have the biggest impact if I'm on a stage in front of 300 people. But the truth of it is, this is where seeing all things with equanimity, you can have one moment with one person, a stranger on the street, that can change both of your lives, that could result in the world being changed. That's absolutely possible. And so body work has become a really special way of me connecting with someone without words. So often we think of connection as conversation, but there's a real energetic connection and wisdom to the body. So I've been in many hundreds of hours of training, but I also have been honoring my intuition and the fact that I believe all of us as humans know how to touch and to connect through touch, and especially as babies. We're doing that all the time. And we forget. And then we get intimidated. And then we think, oh, I'm not good at massaging, or I don't know how to listen in that way. And all of us absolutely do. And so part of this is eventually going to be leading me to lead workshops on intuitive touch and how any of us can connect through touch. So keep an eye out for that. But really the role of a healer or a body worker, especially one who does work with energy, is to help people establish realignment with their personal inner field and then the impersonal outer field of what's going on in the world. And craniosacral is kind of where I've landed as being a core focus in terms of my body work toolkit. I've been trained in many types of massage, but craniosacral is especially wonderful in that it's a non-intrusive method that gives more space to the brain and nervous system and frees up your energy. And it really helps produce a nervous system reset, an open heart, a clear mind, a free body. And you do that through working with cerebral spinal fluid and the movement of cerebral spinal fluid, which surrounds all the bones in your brain. It goes down your spine, into your sacrum, back up. I could go really deep on the science behind it all, but in essence, it's in order to be a craniosacral practitioner, you have to enter a no mind space, which is where we're at 8 hours a day when we sleep. And this idea of having receptive touch. So you cannot touch and think at the same time. Either you are receptive or you are trying to do something to the body. And this is a practice of receptivity and deep listening and slowness. So my practice of craniosacral is a direct counterbalance to the pace of corporate life, what it feels like to be on Zoom calls all day and to sit back and to be so gentle and still with someone, because if you think of a piece of paper as being 100 microns thick, the cranial wave is 40 microns. So to feel and sense the cranial wave and where it's going and where it's stuck, you have to be so still. And you can't be thinking about a bunch of other things. This practice really only works if I'm in alignment and I have the ability to quiet my mind and to be completely present with someone else for 90 minutes is such a discipline, such an act of devotion, and it's a huge gift. What comes out of that space is oftentimes the body feels permission to talk in a way that it doesn't when we're all moving at 1,000 miles a minute. And if you think of trauma in the body as energy that cannot leave, when we give it space, a lot of things can move through.
Last question is, what is the worst and the best piece of advice that you've ever gotten?
It's hard for me to remember because I'm a very present moment person, but interestingly enough, one of the worst pieces of advice that I've gotten is that like college would be the best years of my life.
Same.
It's such a, I think it's descriptive of a bigger bigger category of bad advice, which is when people tell you that such and such decade or such and such moment will be the best or the worst. I think you are setting yourself up for failure on every level. And it's just not good mentorship because it sets expectations. It just removes you from reality and staying present with what is. And the reason they said that was because it was this feeling of no responsibility and you just get to go to school and learn and party. But in reality, having responsibility and being accountable is one of the best feelings in the world. And taking a weekend off means so much more when you have a lot of responsibility and commitments. So that kind of goes hand in hand with like, if you have less responsibility, you're going to have a better time. I don't think that's the case at all. And then the best piece of advice I've ever gotten is something a friend said to me once, and then we've said it to each other back and forth for several years now. And that is that many things are true. And often it kind of connects with integrated family systems, which is a form of therapy that acknowledges that at any point in time, there's a part of me, let's say, that's feeling energized. There's another part of me that's feeling really tired from all the travel I've been doing. There's a part of me that feels excited. There's a part of me that feels overwhelmed. There's a part of me. And so we get in these situations in life where things seem so contradictory. And we sometimes assume that someone's lying or someone's not being honest. And in reality, many things are true at the same time. And I think that statement has really helped me understand when I see a friend and I'm like, they're crushing it at work, but their personal life is falling apart. And like, which one is it? Are they put together or are they a mess? Many things are true. They can be both.
Yes.
And it's not so binary, you know, it's not so black or white.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of this with me, with
Thank
us.
you.
This is a blast.
What a fun, meandering road we just strolled down together.
That's what we're here for. So,
yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Linz.
Thank you for listening to Learning with Lerner and hearing the wisdom, stories, and ideas that will have you feeling inspired and ready to take on the world. If you've enjoyed this, please remember to share, rate, and review. It means the world to me and the team putting it all together. If you're looking for more information, you can find me at lindseylerner.com. That's LindseyLerner.com. Or if you've got any questions or curiosity about me, you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Lindsey Lerner. Thanks again for listening and have an awesome day.